Israeli-Palestinian relations remain tense. The West Bank is still on edge as Israeli and Palestinian pathologists disagree over the cause of death of Palestinian Minister Ziad Abu Ain, who died yesterday after a clash with Israeli forces. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi makes his first official visit to Jordan to discuss regional developments as the two countries work on a strategy to fight the Islamic State. And after 2 months, it could be the end of the Hong Kong pro-democracy protest movement after police move in and clear their main encampment.
The News Today with David Matlin.
Hello and welcome to the program. Here I'm David Matlin. 1 day after Palestinian Minister Ziad Abu Ain died following a clash with Israeli troops, thousands attended his funeral in Ramallah as a joint team of Israeli and Palestinian pathologists disagree about the cause of death. The incident has further strained the already very tense situation across the West Bank and Jerusalem, and now the Palestinian Authority has threatened to cancel security coordination with Israel. We'll be joined by our correspondents tonight at the Kalandia checkpoint near Ramallah, Shai Ben Ari, Leah Bardugo, and Farah Habib. But first, a look back.
ما حصل اليوم هو جريمة بكل المعاني لا يمكن الصبر أو السكوت عليها.
What is clear currently is that he did have a prior heart condition that could have influenced the outcome. But what is most important, what we are actually invested in today, is trying to contain the situation.
حركة حماس تعتبر أن رد الطبيعي لهذه الجريمة هو تعزيز الوحدة الوطنية وباتخاذ إجراءات ضرورية في مقدمتها وقف حقيقي للتنسيق الأمني مع الاحتلال الإسرائيلي.
ولذلك هذه القيادة تجتمع هذه اللحظات وأقول بصراحة كل الخيارات مفتوحة.
Well, joining us this evening in the studio are Ali Wakid, I-24 News senior Middle East analyst, and Avi Malamed, fellow at the Eisenhower Institute. Thank you both for joining us tonight. Ali, I'd like to start with you. The focus of today, this disagreement about the cause of death of the Palestinian minister who died yesterday. The idea was to bring a multinational team to investigate this situation of pathologists, the Israelis, the Palestinians, but also Jordanians as a third party. The Jordanian team seems to have been mostly quiet about the results. The Palestinians and Israelis are disagreeing. What was the Jordanian opinion on this report?
Well, according to what the Palestinians said, the Jordanian pathologist share the same view of the Palestinian one, but in order not to enter in a diplomatic crisis, the Jordanian preferred not to make public their point of view of the autopsy. Now the question, David, is whether Ziad Abu Ain died from the behavior of the Israeli soldiers or naturally because he was sick, etc. It really doesn't change the situation. It really doesn't change the fact that the Palestinian Authority want to show that the Israeli utilizes brutal tools against the non-violent struggle of the Palestinians, and the footages of Palestinians having olive trees in their hands and the Israelis trying to stop them are strong images, and there is really no need to accuse each other on the reason why Abu Ain died. It was enough strong. The Palestinian media campaign, the Palestinian diplomatic campaign is working hours and hours in order to show these footages to the world, and we should pay attention, David. The Palestinians want to invest this incident on their march towards the international community, towards the Security Council, in order to be recognized as an independent state. Exactly. In a moment where the Palestinians start to have some pressure over them to slow this unilateral step.
No, Avi, Where does this, perhaps the answer is obvious to this, but where does this leave the Israelis and the Palestinian Authority now? Is this far worse than they were, the situation they were in just a few days ago, or really is this just the status quo still being maintained?
It's mostly the same old sad place, I agree with Ali. It's mostly about the Palestinian authorities trying to monetize this incident. I don't think that the Palestinian Authority, and for very good reason, really wants to see how things spin out of control, because it will serve immediately the biggest rivalry of the Palestinian Authority. The biggest rivalry of the Palestinian Authority is not the State of Israel, it's Hamas. No wonder Hamas is trying to fuel this fire, because Hamas hopes and prays that this thing will spin out of control, because Hamas right now is very much busy with the problems he caused his own people in the Gaza Strip, as winter is striking at the Gaza Strip, and dozens of thousands of Palestinians are without homes because of the military initiative that Hamas took in the last summer. But again, going back to the context of the relations between the Israel and the Palestinian Authority, each side is trying to monetize all kinds of incidents in order to gain some points in the diplomatic/international arena.
Where are the points to be gained for Israel in this situation? It seems like a lose-lose for the Israeli government.
At this specific incident, it is. But there is something in my mind which is very interesting. One of the first things that the Palestinians did, and it was in the level of the Prime Minister, the Palestinian Prime Minister immediately contacted his colleague, the Jordanian Prime Minister, asking him to interfere. In a way, it was a very clear, in my mind, Palestinian Authority message that basically says, we want to try and to monetize it diplomatically the best way possible. We do not want to cross certain lines because it does not serve the Palestinian Authority, because of the background of what I said before, the challenge that Hamas presents to the Palestinians.
We'll come back to this discussion in a moment here, but to wrap up the latest developments, this is I-24 News reporter Shai Ben-Ari.
A state funeral in Ramallah. Thousands gathered Thursday morning at the presidential compound to pay their respects to Ziad Abu Ain, the Palestinian minister who died Wednesday following a scuffle with Israeli border police. The incident and the controversy surrounding it has threatened to reignite the already tense situation in the West Bank after a few weeks of relative calm. There is pressure on the Palestinian leadership to react harshly to the incident, with security coordination with Israel a particular target.
Netanyahu cannot continue treating the Palestinian Authority without an authority. There are major steps to be taken, including maybe to have the Israeli government resume its responsibilities as the full occupying power, which will include suspension of the security cooperation.
Clashes between Palestinian protesters and Israeli forces broke out in the wake of the funeral. Earlier, an autopsy was performed on Ziad Abu Ain's corpse to determine the exact cause of death. The operation was supervised by both Palestinian and Israeli physicians, who perhaps predictably argued over the results.
The death is a result of, and I can stress, it was an attack, not a natural accident. And the reason of the death is lack of blood in the heart as a result of internal bleeding in the coronary artery caused by trauma, a condition which occurred due to anger and anxiety.
The Israeli doctors stressed that Abu Ain died from a heart attack, noting that the minister suffered from significant blockage of the arteries, and adding that when Abu Ain was grabbed at the neck, this caused massive stress and internal bleeding, which led to full blockage and eventually death.
There is no evidence that he was beaten in the chest by a gun or any other instrument. The signs in the chest are due to resuscitation, and we are in total agreement regarding this issue, all the doctors that attended the autopsy.
He did have a prior heart condition that could have influenced the outcome. But what is most important, and what we are actually invested in today, is trying to contain the situation. We are doing everything in order to prevent the cycle of violence from increasing and expanding.
The character of that cycle will depend greatly on decisions made in Ramallah and Jerusalem.
Well, joining us now from the Kalania checkpoint at the entrance to Ramallah is Shai Ben-Ari, our correspondent there. Shai, this evening, not as loud in the streets as one may have anticipated there. Can you explain what are the reasons here for this muted Palestinian reaction?
Right, David. We're talking about a fairly calm situation right now. Even though, minor clashes did break out in the wake of the funeral, they did end basically on a minor scale. And this was perhaps going against some of the expectations. There was perhaps a lot of fear that this latest incident would lead to some sort of major upheaval, major let's say, violence breaking out in the West Bank. That seems to, for the time being, not be the case. And the reason for that really appears to be that President Abbas has a lot to lose. First of all, there's been a lot of talk, about the security coordination. Various Palestinian ministers, Jibril Rajoub, Saib Erekat, have mentioned that perhaps we are expected to see an ending of that. That certainly has not happened so far. A final decision apparently will be taken tomorrow, but it is very doubtful that President Abbas will choose to go that way. Certainly he has a lot to lose, even when you talk about his own situation. He would have a lot to lose concerning the threat to Hamas that is posed to him, even here in the West Bank. Also, in terms of the overall situation between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, when you talk about the Israeli elections, President Abbas would certainly not have an interest in igniting the situation right now, because, of course, that would tend to help the Israeli right wing, and it is no secret that President Abbas would probably not be interested in a right-wing victory in the coming elections. There's a lot of talk about the new center-left alliances, which are gaining momentum at the moment, and President Abbas would certainly be interested in helping those guys out. Also, in terms of the Palestinian diplomatic efforts, international efforts, we have that UN initiative coming up in January, which is set to set a timeline for the end of the occupation of the West Bank. That is at least what the Palestinians are hoping for. There are even some rumors of perhaps not seeing a U.S. veto in that regard. That would also be helped by the Palestinians keeping it quiet and not igniting the situation any further than it already is ignited, let's say.
Well, correspondent Shai Ben-Ari standing by in the West Bank at the Kalandia checkpoint near Ramallah. Thank you for the report. Ali, what's your response to that? The muted response in the street. We're not seeing the clashes, the riots that many expected. How do you explain that?
First, I adopt totally what Shai Ben-Ari said, but we shall wait to tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday, after the praise of Friday, and to see the impact of this incident over the weekly demonstrations that we see after Friday praise. Although in the last Fridays it was relatively calm. The Palestinian Authority is well aware that for the first time since years, the Israeli public is almost fed up with the current prime minister, and there is a chance to see Netanyahu replaced, and the Palestinian Authority doesn't want to give fuel to the Benjamin Netanyahu campaign. Second, we heard in the report what Saib Erekat said, what yesterday said Jibril Rajoub about the security coordination. One, the Palestinians have no really choice to stop the coordination. The salaries of the Palestinian security men are paid by the U.S. and by the European Union, and the condition of this payment, one of the conditions, is that the Palestinians will keep their security coordination with the Israelis. Second, these words of Saib Erekat and Jibril Rajoub are targeting two actors. One, the international community, mainly the U.S., as Shai Ben-Ari said, might not put their veto. But in order not to put their veto, the Americans are pushing the Europeans to try to replace the Arab-Palestinian initiative in a European one. The Palestinians demand a 2 years deadline for an agreement, and the European
withdrawal from the
exactly, and the Europeans are proposing a formula that talks about 2 years negotiations. That at the end of these 2 years of negotiations, we will try to settle the controversial issues, and the Palestinians are trying to improve their position in this bargaining with the Europeans, with the American, but not to play at the hands of Israel and to keep the situation calm.
Avi, how do you see this as, again, the Palestinian street, the threat now coming from the authority about ending security cooperation? This is nearly 20 years since the Oslo Accords, almost unbroken coordination between Israel and the Palestinian Authority now on security. Do you see it as a real credible threat now that they may truly end this coordination?
No, I don't think so. It's not their interest. Look, we have to look also in things that happened in the external circles, and mostly in the Middle East. Next week, the president of Egypt is visiting Jordan. This is a very important signal. And the signal is also to the Palestinian Authority. I've been talking about it for a long time. As of now, there is an axis that is being built up in the Middle East of Arab major states that is interested in stability. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Jordan. I want to remind us all that they are all engaged today in confronting the challenge of, for example, the Muslim Brotherhood. So today, when they are looking for stability, they are sending a very clear signal to Mahmoud Abbas, basically saying, Of course, you have to do something about it, but do not cross certain lines because we don't want it to radiate or percolate into Jordan or Egypt and
But there's potentially a bigger fight at stake here.
There is, of course, it's always about the biggest fight. Mahmoud Abbas knows today that there are huge forces that are now shaping this region. The Palestinians, with all due respect, is a very small faction, and he has to take it into consideration.
And many say that it's become a local conflict and not the regional driver that many said it once was.
It never was really the regional driver. It was the regional driver in the mindset of people. Many of them are coming from the West. But as a matter of fact, it was never the real big story of the Middle East. Nevertheless, it would definitely will not be, it is not the interest of the Palestinian Authority to generate a process that will spin out of control in the West Bank. And let me reiterate it. Hamas is praying that that will happen. If the Palestinian Authority would like to play exactly straight to the hand of Hamas, they will spin it out of control. I don't think they want to do that.
Let's look at the Israeli election campaign now underway as well. You touched on this before, that how large does this feature in Palestinian society, though, the election now, the campaign just underway in Israel? Is this something that people are looking at closely? And as you mentioned, they don't want to influence the situation one way or another.
I want to separate the Palestinian society from the Palestinian leadership. The Palestinian society doesn't believe that there is a real difference between the center-left and the center-right or the right in Israel. There were negotiations with Barak when he was at the head of the labor and of the government, and nothing happened from their point of view. And also with Ehud Olmert and of course Benjamin Netanyahu, although they regret what happened with, some of them regret what happened with Ehud Olmert, but they believe that there is a momentum in the Israeli elections, in the Israeli society for a replacement of Benjamin Netanyahu. Now the question whether Benjamin Netanyahu will be replaced by Bougie Herzog or by Naftali Bennett, but the Palestinians, as part of a coordinated campaign that includes EU states and includes parts of the US administration, know that their interest is to keep the situation calm. If you want the Israeli to present the bill at March 17 to Benjamin Netanyahu, don't give Benjamin Netanyahu reasons or the Israeli government reason to escalate the situation. This is why tomorrow I learned that the Palestinian Security Service will do everything they can in order to keep the protests, and there will be protests tomorrow after the prayers, in order to keep them under control and to be measured, and not something that we did not meet at such incidents.
Now, how much control or will to make change does President Mahmoud Abbas have within Palestinian society? Is he really a driver right now of policy and of the direction that this is going?
No. He's in transitional phase, as I've been saying for a long time. Look, I'm looking at what's going on within the Palestinian Authority, and it's quite disturbing because I don't see really the next leadership. Mahmoud Abbas is 80 years old and more. He's not very healthy. Obviously, I wish him to live until 120, but, So when I'm trying to look at to see who's coming next and what is the next leadership with the next message within the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, I don't see something that I could say today, or someone that I could say today, he's going to play a decisive, productive leadership role. You just have to look what's going on within the Palestinian Authority, senior people that keep on fighting all the time, Dahlan and Rajoub and other people. It's kind of like a little bit disturbing, sort of speaking. But in that context, Mahmoud Abbas, as I've been saying for a long time, is a transitional phase.
Well, now we're looking at the Egyptian-Jordanian situation here somewhat, as there's some high-level meetings to take place in the next week here. Is Israel the silent partner in a way in these discussions, as a regional partner for these two, especially when it comes to security?
Israel is a silent partner, but Israel will keep being a discreet partner as long as the situation with the Palestinians is so tended. The Egyptians and the Jordanian and other Arab pragmatic states cannot welcome a public coordination with Israel if the situation in the Palestinian territories is as such as we saw in the last days. But David, Israel should not bet on the fact that there is a common interest between Israel and the Arab states regarding the Islamic State, regarding the jihadist threat. And I disagree with Mr. Melamed. The main issue for the Arab world, the main issue for the West remains the Palestinian cause, which Secretary of State Kerry said that in all his visits in the region, all the leaders mentioned the Palestinian-Israeli conflict as a reason to fuel the recruitment of the Islamic State and other jihadist group. Maybe I think that Secretary of State exaggerated a little bit, but this is in general the vision of the leaderships in the region.
Speaking to a central point, that this is a central issue of concern on the Arab Street across the Middle East.
Yeah, exactly. And it is true that in Egypt people have daily affairs to deal with than the situation of the Palestinian Israelis. And this is why both the Egyptians and the Jordanians try to space the issue of Jerusalem and to space the issue of the Al-Aqsa Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount from this conflict in order not to color this conflict with religious colors, which will really present a threat to the Arab pragmatic regimes.
Again, speaking about Egypt, Jordan here a little bit, Israel, a partner, but not an open partner, understandably, in this situation. Well, let's back up now and look at the Hamas and Fatah rift right now. This is a major discord and potentially a bigger source of issue than anything else we've discussed. I know coming up now, I believe it's December 12th, the 27th anniversary of the founding of Hamas now. Rallies maybe planned or maybe not. We're not sure if they're going to happen in the Gaza Strip even. They're afraid of low turnout. We're not even sure if they're going to happen in the West Bank now.
Official position is that there won't be rallies. They explain it in that people were died, and it's not normal that we are going to celebrate our foundation. The reason is that I believe that Hamas is afraid that their rallies won't be so attended by the Palestinian masses in the Gaza Strip. And the truth is that Hamas have no more and additional fees to pay on such rallies.
And in the West Bank, the concern is there as well that Fatah may or may not allow big rallies to celebrate the Hamas founding anniversary. Again, does this speak of just a broken line of connection between these two sides of Palestinian society?
Look, the Palestinian famous reconciliation is a very strange creature. This is not real reconciliation, of course. It's like hugging and stabbing while you are hugging. Look, a couple of weeks ago, the Hamas, basically the Fatah was supposed to commemorate the day of the death of Yasser Arafat, the mythological leader of the Palestinians. The very same day, something very mysterious happened in the Gaza Strip.
This was on November 11th, if I'm not mistaken, about a month ago.
15 houses of Fatah senior people will explode. Hamas, of course, denied any kind of connection to this thing, but nobody really have any kind of illusion about it. Look, it's not a reconciliation. It's a totally split that is non-bridgeable, ideologically, politically, culturally, and so forth. Mahmoud Abbas was recently interviewed in Egypt, and he said Hamas caused catastrophe to the people of the Gaza Strip. And he was saying in Arabic, why do you come telling me stories about triumph? We did not won this round. Hamas caused catastrophe. Hamas is an irresponsible factor. He's dragging the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip from one catastrophe to the other, which by the way, it's correct. So when you are talking about reconciliation, there is no reconciliation, obviously. And this is a rivalry that is non-bridgeable. In that context, of course, we have to remember that in the context of the wide Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I've been saying it, I will be saying it time and time again, as long as Palestinians come to the table and they don't yet have a real solid consensus that is productive one regarding to the question, how do they want to solve the conflict with Israel, you won't have a real breakthrough.
It's hard to see how there could ever be a breakthrough or some sort of agreement signed with a disjointed Palestinian government here. We'll come back to this in a moment. But today we went out to the streets and asked people if they think that Israel's responsible for the death of Palestinian minister just yesterday.
Usually the police does use force against Arab or left-wing protesters. So judging from the past, it seems that they are responsible.
לפי מה שקורה בדרך כלל. אז נראה לי שהם כן אחראים.
There's no smoke without a fire. If he wouldn't have been injured, he wouldn't have died. Israel will find a way to escape from taking responsibility.
If the whole story about an officer that attacked him and caused his death is true, then I think it's horrifying.
Of course, Israel is responsible for his death. I think that if he didn't die during the protest, he would have died at his house.
I think it is just an unfortunate situation, and there is no reason for it to happen. Both sides are equally responsible, but Israel is definitely acting too strongly.
Ali, even with this latest source of discord between Israelis and Palestinians, unable to agree on what caused the death here, does it matter? Is the narrative, do the details really matter at this point?
No, it doesn't matter, but a couple of months ago, there were this famous story of the two Palestinian teenagers who were killed in Ramallah, in Bitunia. The Israeli denied any connection to the incident, accusing the Palestinian on shooting the teenagers, and after the Israeli were obliged to participate in the autopsy exam, the Israelis admitted that it was an Israeli soldier who shot the two guys from their back, and this soldier is now facing a trial, a military trial. This is why this time Israeli automatically proposed to participate in the autopsy of this incident. But the fact is that the Palestinians, whether he died from because he was sick, or it was the Israeli exaggerated brutality, it doesn't matter. The Palestinians are using this incident in order to accelerate their campaign.
Well, we know there are a lot of roadblocks now to any sort of breakthrough, any sort of positive development. We've mentioned many of them here. Avi, can you give us one? What can break the situation now? Is it just have to play out, or is there something that can be done by either side at this point to cool off the situation?
Look, as I said before, in order to have a real breakthrough, and for both sides, the Israelis and the Palestinians, there must be an inner process that both sides have to go through. Mostly the Palestinians, and I mentioned it before, I don't want to reiterate it. But then I want to say something else in that context, and that is that in the end of the day, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is going to be solved as an outcome of things that will happen in the external regional circles, not the other way around. In other words, although Mr. Waked mentioned before, I do not agree with him, the Middle East is not shaped by the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is shaped by the Middle East. And there are today many serious things that happen in the Middle East. Some of them offer us challenges, but some of them are offering us prospects. And I think today there may be a potential for a kind of like a regional initiative. There are enough forces today in the region that could come together, and if the Israeli government would be proactive.
On that note, on that positive note,
could be done.
Avi Melamed, thank you very much, and Ali Waked, appreciate your time on the program here. We'll be right back after a short break here with more news. Israeli-Palestinian relations remain tense. The West Bank is still on edge as Israeli and Palestinian pathologists disagree over the cause of death of Palestinian Minister Ziad Abu Ain, who died yesterday after a clash with Israeli forces. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi makes his first official visit to Jordan to discuss regional developments as the two countries work on a strategy to fight the Islamic State. And after 2 months, it could be the end of the Hong Kong pro-democracy protest movement after police move in and clear their main encampment. Welcome back to the program here. Now, Egyptian President al-Sisi flew to Amman, Jordan, and met with King Abdullah today. Well, the talks mostly centered around bilateral relations and issues of mutual concern, such as the fight against the Islamic State militants and the future of peace negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. Hisham Farid and Ayman Siksak have more.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi arrived in the Jordanian capital of Amman today to meet with King Abdullah. On the agenda for the two Arab leaders, the recent developments in the Middle East and the strengthening of ties between Egypt and Jordan. Most notably, though, al-Sisi and the Jordanian king reportedly discussed ways of countering terrorism, specifically in Syria. The current state of affairs in the Palestinian territories was another key point in the meeting, which, according to Egyptian sources, lasted only a few hours. The Jordanian king stressed during the meeting that his country sees Egypt as a prominent player in maintaining its position in the Arab world. The continuation of bilateral relations was therefore a central concern. Jordan had relied on Egyptian gas for 80% of its energy production, but the supply was cut significantly following the IS attack on Egyptian pipelines in Sinai in January this year. It was understandable, therefore, that the battle against the terrorist organization, which has ravaged Syria and Iraq for months, was the highlight of the meeting in Amman. On his part, al-Sisi expressed his country's appreciation for Jordan's ongoing backing of its interests and the formation of stable relationships with other Arab countries, signaling, possibly, a potentially wide Arab alliance against the IS.
Well, joining us now in the studio is former Israeli ambassador to Egypt, Yitzhak Lebanon. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me, David.
So as you see the new Egyptian president going to Oman now to meet with the king, how significant of a bilateral meeting is this among Western allied nations in the Middle East?
I think it goes beyond the bilateral. You see, Sisi is very busy with domestic issues, and he had a lot really on his plate. But he never neglected the foreign policy of Egypt. This is why we saw him, going to Europe, the United States, Russia.
And speaking largely on controversial issues, Israeli-Palestinian issues.
Yes, and he is not neglecting even, the Arab world. And this is why he is going and visiting. He started with Morocco, with Libya, and with Algeria, and now with Jordan. This is not the first time that he met the king. Secondly, in the eyes of the Egyptians, Jordan has a pivotal role to play in the fight of the coalition, the international coalition against the ISIS or the Islamic State and the terrorism in general. Secondly, Egypt understands very well the vulnerability of Jordan. And this is why Sisi, he is trying to go toward, let's say, crystallizing the kind of a coalition of pragmatic Arabic states like Jordan, like Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, etc., in order to meet the challenges of the Middle East. Beside this, Jordan is now member of the Security Council for this month. And now that the Palestinians are going to the Security Council and ask for a decision or resolution, so the Jordanian has a role to play, and this is why Sisi wanted to go and to coordinate with the Jordanian king what's going to be in this resolution and if they will go for the Security Council or not. This is the issue of the peace process.
Right now, the Israeli-Palestinian issue, is this a big issue on the table between these two leaders?
No, I think that the main issue is the terrorism between Jordan and Egypt. The second thing is exactly the Palestinians, and the third is the bilateral. The bilateral, because Sisi has some ideas how to solve, to bring some solution to the Syrian problem. He has, a few ideas concerning the Iraqi solution. He has another ideas concerning, the Libyan. So it is important to share all this with Jordan, who is at the Security Council. But the main purpose of this visit, first of all, is to visit back, because the Jordanian king was in Egypt just, at the end of November. At the airport, and he met with Sisi. So it was now an official visit to come and to discuss bilateral issues and issues of the region. But the main focus, I think, it is how to fight terrorism, because Jordan fear the ISIS, and Egypt has already its own terrorism in Sinai and the Ansar Beit al-Maqdis.
A lot of shared interests here between these countries. Ambassador Yitzhak Lebanon, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, now Hong Kong police dismantled the city's main protest site on Thursday, bringing an end to the 2-month-long struggle to topple the city's chief executive and enact democratic reforms. Ayman Siksek reports.
Chinese police forces are moving forward with a systematic crackdown on pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong Thursday, hauling activists away and clearing what has become the main protest site. The evacuation marked the virtual end to more than 2 months of street demonstrations. But some protesters feel the increased police action will result in positive global media attention.
I think that this raised a lot of people's awareness, and like today, many people and media are here to witness how the police is going to clear everything. So I think it's all worth it. It lets more people know.
But the growing international attention to the cause of the protesters in Hong Kong was not welcomed by everyone. On Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry again voiced its opposition to any foreign governments interfering in what it termed an internal affair.
I want to stress that the Chinese central government and the government of Hong Kong have full authority to handle the issue according to law. Certain British members of parliament should stop their meaningless hype.
So is this the end for Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement? Signaling an important shift in the momentum of the protests, some protesters chose to evacuate the main site peacefully. Those who chose to hold out were forcefully removed by the police. Hundreds of police forces dragged the protesters' tents away from the site, along with the symbolic umbrellas, which activists had used to guard against pepper spray, and which have since become emblematic of their peaceful struggle.
Well, joining us now from Hong Kong is freelance journalist Tom Grundy. Well, Tom, thanks for joining us. It's been a dramatic day there now. In your opinion, is this the end of the movement as we know it?
Well, I think we've seen the birth pangs of a renewed democracy movement over the past 75 days in Hong Kong. Young people, many of whom previously not especially politicized, have certainly engaged in this issue, even though many of the student leaders have conceded that their demands for full universal suffrage and for the city's besieged chief executive to stand down have not been granted. The government has not budged an inch on those issues.
I understand that those who stayed until the end of the protest there had their information and IDs collected by authorities. Is this for future prosecution or a scare tactic?
Well, the authorities have not said how they'll use that information, but it's true that 909 people were ID'd as they left the cordoned off area of the protest site today. There were also 209 arrests at the former Occupy site. Around 7,000 police slowly moved in and swept through the site off the back of a court injunction as they slowly moved in to the camp near government headquarters. In one corner, there was a sit-in staged by some pan-democratic legislators, protesters, and students. And over the following hours, up until quite late at night, one by one, they were arrested. And true to the tradition of civil disobedience, they went limp and chanted, "We want universal suffrage," as they were taken away. Hong Kong's democracy icon Martin Lee was among them, and he said, "Give me democracy or give me death." He's in his 70s, and it was quite a moment as he was removed by police.
Well, thank you very much, Tom Grundy in Hong Kong.
Thank you.
And now we take a look at the economy. Well, now we're joined by Lino Friedfeld, our economic analyst. Lino, thanks for being with us today.
Good evening, David.
What do you have for us to start?
China actually challenging France in its core export market in Maghreb country, in Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia. Actually, the European Union, which is a leading trading partner with Maghreb, among the European Union, France is still having market share of 15%. Second is Spain with 10.6%, but China is coming at the third rank with 10.1%. It's really challenging, the market.
Well, China, we've been speaking about China this week, their economy becoming the #1 in the world this next week, really lifting off here. They seem to be taking over everything here. What's another main story for us?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've got the China, and 10 years ago there was in the fifth rank, today it's the third rank. In 5 years or 10 years, obviously they're going to be on the top spot. Maybe another top story is around the military equipment. Actually, Egypt sent a high delegation to France about, air and marine officials. They're going to buy actually 2 high-profile deals. The first one is buying the Rafale. Rafale is manufactured by Dassault Aviation, which is a very high-end, air combat jet. And it's a contract for 26 aircraft estimated at €4 billion. And the second contract is manufactured by a French company for warship. It's actually frigate. It's going to buy 2 boats with a contract estimated at €2 billion.
Well, it seems like a big shift for Egypt, who traditionally gets much of their military hardware from the United States. Now they're looking to Europe for some big deals.
Yeah, because Zeus actually technology in terms of the warship and also the jet fighter are very, very advanced in terms of technology.
And a big deal. I mean, this is not a small financial deal, a small economic agreement here.
It's a huge deal, actually, for France, for the Rafale. They have been trying to sell, the jet to Qatar, to India, to other countries. They never succeeded. They're still into negotiation with Qatar and India, but maybe it's going to be the first time that they're going to sell this very high-end craft to Egypt.
So it could be a win-win for both countries, for France, who's been trying to sell this hardware.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you very much, Lionel Friedfeld, for your time here in our look at the day's economic news.
Thank you, David.
Well, Russia's President Vladimir Putin held talks today with India's new Prime Minister Narendra Modi as Moscow, under sanctions, seeks to strengthen energy, defense, and strategic ties in Asia. The I-24 News Desk has the story.
Vladimir Putin is looking to advance nuclear power, oil and natural gas, and even diamond deals with long-standing ally India. On his first visit since Prime Minister Narendra Modi swept to power in May, Russo-India trade at $10 billion is only 1/9 of the volume between Russia and China. Putin's trip is seen as an opportunity to reaffirm Russia's interest in India, a regional ally and a partner in the BRICS group of emerging market nations.
We're going to do everything for the development of the Russian-Indian partnership for the sake of our two great nations.
Today, we have outlined an ambitious vision for nuclear energy of at least 10 more reactors. It will have the highest standards of safety in the world.
Putin's India visit will prepare the way for 2 Siberian oil deals and chart a route for a first pipeline between the two countries. On defense, the two sides will seek to move ahead with long-delayed projects to develop a joint 5th-generation fighter jet and multi-role transport aircraft, both made fully in India, as India relies on Russia for 60% of its armed purchases.
Well, 3 Ukrainian soldiers were killed and 8 wounded in attacks by pro-Russian separatists in just the past 24 hours, according to a military spokesman, further marring a truce which began a day of silence on Tuesday. Well, also today, in a speech in Parliament, Ukraine's Prime Minister called for a conference of international lenders to provide the country with extra funds to head off possible debt default. Well, Israeli elections. Moving to that topic now, again, it's something we've been following closely here. After yesterday's merger between Tzipi Livni's Hatzanuah party and the Labour Party, today there are reports that Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman, former Finance Minister Yair Lapid, and Moshe Kachlon are talking of a merger. Uri Shapira explains the latest.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu passed his first major test in the 2015 election campaign when his Likud party approved his proposal to advance the primaries for party leadership to December 31. In this way, Netanyahu blocked his biggest opponent from within the party, former Interior Minister Gidon Saar, who was tipped to run against Netanyahu, but has now said he will not, since the new primary date gives him no time to organize his challenge.
It's a massive media campaign, almost unprecedented in its size, that supports almost any candidate from any party that opposes the Likud under my leadership.
For many, Netanyahu sound frightened and defensive despite his achievement. A day after the dramatic announcement of the leader of the Labour Party, Yitzhak Herzog, and former Minister of Justice, Tzipi Livni, that they will run together on the next elections, the political arena that for years seems frozen is finally heating up. According to the latest poll, Herzog and Livni will receive no less than 24 seats, which will make them the largest party in the Israeli parliament.
I promised to myself the day I was elected to head the Labour Party that this time Netanyahu will not form a government, not on my watch.
I'm here to create the force multiplier that will change the government of the State of Israel.
But perhaps Livni and Herzog's plan to topple Netanyahu's government are premature. The polls show no significant change in the left-wing, right-wing blocs, and despite the Labour Party's rise in the polls, it will be a very difficult task for it to form a stable coalition. It is too early to determine who will win the next elections. The answer could come only on election day, perhaps even much later than that.
Well, staying in Israel now, the police, together with the Internal Security Service, the Shin Bet, arrested 3 radical right-wing activists who have now admitted to their role in an arson attack on a bilingual Hebrew-Arabic school in Jerusalem just 2 weeks ago. Well, the Max Rain Hand-in-Hand School is the largest joint Jewish-Arab school in the country, symbolizing coexistence in the fractured capital. The far-right arsonists are part of the Lahava organization, whose main goal is to prevent interfaith marriage between Jews and either Muslim or Christian Arabs. Well, now moving on, the upper house of the French parliament voted today to recognize Palestinian statehood. Well, the vote, however, was close. 153 senators voted in favor, and 146 opposed the motion. The Senate's vote follows a similar vote in France's lower house of parliament, which, like today's motion, was also a symbolic statement only and not a binding resolution. Well, the European Parliament will vote next week on recognizing a Palestinian state after many of its members have done so already. Well, following the increasing interest of Europe in the Middle East, I-24 News correspondent Eli Ochenberg tried to understand why now.
3 months ago, we had these two traumatic speeches of Netanyahu and Abu Mazen in the UN. In which they made clear that there are no talks, will be no talks, and nothing in the pipeline. Soon after these two speeches in the UN, there was a change in the government in Sweden.
Today, the government of Sweden has decided to recognize the state of Palestine.
And then it started moving all over Europe.
It is indeed spreading all across Europe, and next week it will even reach the European Parliament. Recognizing a Palestinian state has become the hottest European fashion.
It's sexier. It's talked about since the stalemate in the negotiations between Bibi and Abu Mazen. There's been a growing sentiment of frustration among the Europeans. This also is part of the more pro-Palestinian trend. This is not surprising. This has been the European trend for quite a long time.
When the peace talks collapsed, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas set himself a goal to boost the diplomatic activity of the PA, aiming at bypassing the negotiations with Israel on the way to a Palestinian state. This European wave is a clear indication Abbas's attempts are working, at least on the European state of mind, since such decisions are only symbolic. Yet the main reason for the ever-growing interest of the EU in the Middle East conflict might upset Abbas and any other regional leaders who pat themselves on the back when Europe appears to be responding to its vision.
Conflict right on the doorstep of Europe, in which we have our own strategic interest in solving, and so it's not only for the blue eyes of the Israelis and the Palestinians.
And it's more than just a security interest. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict in particular and the entire Middle East have long ties with Europe. From a European perspective, involvement in solving the conflict is a responsibility. And the wave of recognition is just another attempt. Whether it fails or succeeds is unimportant.
There is no possibility to stay away or to abstain from really looking at this conflict. Europe is not a geographical entity. It is an idea, so Israel is a part of that.
Well, yesterday in northern Israel, the 7th annual Religion Summit took place, and our correspondent Uri Shapira went there, and he left inspired.
It almost looked like a scene from ancient Greece. Top spiritual leaders from the main religions in Israel gathering to share thoughts and ideas. Dozens of Druze, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish clergy met Wednesday in the picturesque Druze site Nabi Shuaib in northern Israel for the 7th Annual Religion Council Summit, a government initiative to find common ground among the different religious groups in the country.
Only by discussing and accepting the other, we can do good deeds.
Once we sit together and talk, we see that the differences between us are reduced. True, we have some disagreements, but it doesn't mean that we can't live together, side by side.
We gather here to declare that all religions have a source of humanity. There is no religion that doesn't call for love, peace, and compassion.
For a moment, it seems that everyone can put their problems aside and just talk with each other. The participants were divided to 3 different groups, each dedicated to one subject: while the main topic was the golden rule: love your neighbor as yourself.
We wanted to go out from this meeting today with a very strong statement, because there is a kind of silence there, and that silence is not justified.
Maybe the leaders of the communities and the religious maybe influenced something about the new generation, our villages, to love, to respect, but the problems of the government and the problems of the political issues we cannot solve here, and we are not discuss these problems in this place.
However, political issues float above them whether they like it or not. A few months after the outbreak of the clashes over Temple Mount, the term religions war became widespread in Jerusalem. But even the non-religious officials who attended the summit agreed that this gathering can help to build bridges between the different beliefs.
I thought from the beginning that this summit is highly important. It is important as it is, and especially in this current time of tension.
But old habits die hard. Former Deputy Minister Ayub Kara, a member of the Druze community, believes that there is room for just one state religion.
I don't think that the nationality law is the problem, because this is the land of the Jewish people. This is what the UN decided.
Participants in this summit truly believe they can achieve peace by coming together and talking. This is perhaps a very naive way of thinking, or perhaps it's a very logical one.
Now, for something I wait for all day here, we'll take a look at the day's sports. And now we're joined by the host of our sports magazine, Jonathan Regev.
David?
I always want to play the drum roll. Not there anyway. Yes, Manchester City last night.
Yes.
Backs up against the wall. What happened?
How much character did this team show? Let's just give the pretext. They came to Rome. They faced Roma at the Olimpico, knowing that they have to win. A draw may not be enough. Now, if that's not enough, Manchester City has been having quite a slow season in the Champions League. And up until recently, also in the Premier League, that has changed a bit. But they came into the game without Sergio Aguero, their leading striker, who was out for 8 weeks with injury, without Yaya Toure, without Captain Vincent Kompany. 3 crucial players away in Rome.
And maybe
they
expectations
won 2-0.
were low. Maybe they didn't have the pressure.
Well, yes, but at the end of the day, this is Manchester City with a very high budget. They were expected to qualify at least to the second stage from this group. Yes, behind Bayern Munich, that's true, but above Roma, above CSKA Moscow, and they came into the final game not knowing if they would go, because they had to win in Rome, and they did it 1-2-0, an exceptional win. And they've got a lot of character. Winning like this,
a big win against Bayern Munich as well a couple weeks ago.
Absolutely, 2 weeks ago. They were out of competition, almost out of competition. They were down 2-1 against Bayern Munich in that game. 5 minutes from time, Aguero was a savior. He scored a hat-trick in that game. 2 goals coming in the final 5 minutes. He wasn't in this time. Other players stepped up. Manchester City wins. I'm not a Manchester City fan, but you gotta really acknowledge their character.
You think there's more magic in the works for this team?
Absolutely, and they've been just 2 weeks ago they were 8 points behind Chelsea in the Premier League. Now it's down to 3. Even with Aguero injured, they're on a good roll. Absolutely.
Well, now moving to Beijing, I understand some of the Olympic venues are being reused.
Yes, one of the problems of the Olympic cities, Olympic host cities, is the fact that a lot of the venues, giant venues, are left unused.
Huge
we're seeing
investment,
we're seeing that in Athens, Montreal. We know is paying to this day the debts of the 1976 Olympics. What is Beijing doing? They're hosting big events in the Olympic Stadium. The Bird's Nest Stadium, which is known, has become a winter sports event. Look at this, the beautiful images from Beijing. That's inside a stadium, and it looks just like the biggest ski resorts you can have. It started with some snowboard competition. We're seeing they're having a skiing competition in the stadium right now. This is how you reuse a stadium. Of course, this is China. They have the money, the resources to bring in all those big tournaments. But yet, that is how you have a big stadium there, and it's not just falling apart as we're seeing in other places.
I see they put snow in there, but I guess the big question I have, were there people there? We didn't see many people in the stands.
No, not at the beginning, but in the first stage now. But then eventually people came in, not 80,000 fans like we saw in the opening ceremony of the Olympics, but yeah, people did come in, and the stadium is being reused, which is good.
And what's the last item you have for us?
Running up 2,120 stairs, 82 floors. Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
82 floors.
82 floors, run up. That's what more than 1,000 runners did.
I hope the rent is cheap up there. You gotta walk up that many floors.
The air is thin, that's for sure.
Wow.
That's the Hong Kong vertical run over the international tower over there at Hong Kong. It's the final stage. There's actually a vertical run world championship in many skyscrapers around the world. This is the last stage, and Australian runners, by the way, they won both the men's and the women's titles. Maybe they run a lot up the stairs in Australia. I don't know what they do. Apparently they do something right, because
they run in the outback or somewhere. They're running.
I don't know how high you can run in the outback, but you know they are doing something right, because both the men's and the women's competition was won by Australian athletes. So congratulations.
Is that because you slowed down at the end of this race? I know, I don't remember where you placed, but I think you let them pass you a little bit.
Yeah.
The 80th floor.
Yeah, you go ahead. But hey, they ran 82 floors. They ran all of them, and congratulations to them. They brought the gold medal to Australia, both the men's and the women's.
There's a similar type of competition here in Tel Aviv.
Yes,
right?
exactly. We're not in the world tour yet, but there is one in the Azrieli Towers in central Tel Aviv. There's also one running the one with 8 legs around the world, including the Empire State Building, which is even higher than 82 floors. I don't know how these people run up all those stairs, but hey, that's a day of fun for them.
The mystery.
Go ahead, enjoy.
Jonathan Regev, great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for calling me.
And we'll be back after the break with the Daily Debate, focused on the unfolding election drama in Israel. Don't miss it.